The blood-red sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty auction block where Rebecca Jenkins stood clutching her mother's trembling hand. Both women shackled and stripped of everything but their tattered dresses and dignity. The year was 1871, and Buffalo, Wyoming territory was booming with the promise of new railroads, new fortunes, and for some unfortunate souls like Rebecca and her mother Eleanor, new nightmares. Rebecca's heart hammered against her ribs as the auctioneer's voice boomed across the crowd of rough-looking men. At 22, she had never imagined ending up here after her father's death left them with mounting debts. The bank had taken everything, their small farm outside of St. Louis, their possessions, and finally, their freedom when her father's creditor decided to recoup his losses by selling them as indentured servants. Next up, two women, a fine worker in her 40s, still strong, and her daughter young, educated, and pretty enough to brighten any household. The auctioneer's voice carried over the murmurs of the crowd as he gestured to Rebecca and Eleanor. "Sold together or separate, gentlemen, do I hear an opening bid?" Rebecca stood tall despite her fear, her blue eyes scanning the sea of unfamiliar faces. Most were hardened by life on the frontier, miners, ranch hands, and businessmen looking for cheap labor. Her mother's fingers tightened around hers as several men called out bids. $50 for the young one, a voice slurred from the back. $75 for both, another countered. Rebecca's stomach twisted as a tall, bearded man in a filthy coat leered at her and raised his hand. 100 for just the girl. The bidding continued, climbing steadily until a commanding voice cut through the commotion. 300 for both women. The crowd parted as a man stepped forward. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to hard work and respect. His face was sun-bronzed beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and his eyes, a startling shade of green, assessed Rebecca and her mother with unsettling directness. "Owen Larson," someone whispered, and Rebecca caught fragments of conversation around her. "Owns the Double L Ranch. Biggest spread north of Cheyenne, lost his wife 2 years back." The auctioneer grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. $300 from Mr. Larson. Do I hear $350? The bearded man who'd been eyeing Rebecca spat on the ground. $350 for just the girl. Owen Larson's expression hardened. $400 for both. $450 for the young one, the bearded man persisted. $500 for both women, Larson countered, his voice calm but edged with steel, and that's final. A tense silence fell over the crowd. The auctioneer looked between Larson and the other bidder before bringing down his gavel with a sharp crack. Sold to Owen Larson for $500. Relief flooded Rebecca's body even as uncertainty gripped her. What fate awaited them at this stranger's ranch? She'd heard whispered stories of the cruelty some indentured servants faced in the West, far from civilization and law. The transaction was completed quickly. Owen Larson signed papers and handed over cash while Rebecca and her mother stood waiting, their futures decided by strangers. When he finally approached them, Rebecca lifted her chin defiantly, determined not to show fear. "My wagon's over there," he said, nodding toward a well-maintained buckboard at the edge of the square. His voice was surprisingly gentle despite his imposing presence. "Let's get those shackles off first." With a key provided by the auctioneer, he unlocked the iron cuffs binding their wrists. Rebecca winced as circulation rushed back into her hands, red marks stark against her pale skin. "Why did you buy us?" Eleanor asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Owen Larson studied them for a long moment. "My ranch needs help, and you two needed help more than most." His gaze softened slightly. "I know what it's like to lose everything. Now come along, it's a 2-hour ride to the ranch, and I'd like to get there before dark." As they walked toward the wagon, Rebecca noticed her mother limping slightly from standing so long on the auction block. Larson noticed too, slowing his pace without comment. The bearded bidder suddenly blocked their path, reeking of whiskey and unwashed clothes. "Mighty generous of you, Larson, paying double what these two are worth." "Step aside, Haggerty," Larson said evenly. "Always were too soft for your own good," Haggerty sneered, "especially for a pretty face." His eyes roved over Rebecca in a way that made her skin crawl. Owen Larson stepped between them, his hand resting casually near the revolver at his hip. I said, "Step aside." Something in his tone made Haggerty back down, though he muttered curses as he retreated. At the wagon, Larson helped Eleanor climb onto the seat before turning to assist Rebecca. As she settled beside her mother, he reached into the back and pulled out a canteen and a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Water and some bread," he said, handing them over. "Figured you probably haven't been fed properly." The simple kindness after days of rough treatment brought unexpected tears to Rebecca's eyes, which she quickly blinked away. As Larson climbed up and took the reins, she studied his profile, trying to understand this man who had just purchased them. The wagon pulled away from town, and Rebecca watched buffalo grow smaller behind them. The vast Wyoming landscape opened before them, rolling grasslands punctuated by distant mountains, the endless sky deepening toward dusk. "What happens now?" Rebecca finally asked, breaking the silence. "What exactly will be required of us?" Owen glanced at her, then back to the trail. "Your mother will help with the house cooking, cleaning, and such. The previous housekeeper left to get married last month. As for you, can you read and write?" "Yes," Rebecca answered. "My father was a schoolteacher before he tried farming. He educated me himself." Owen nodded. "Good. I've been looking for someone to keep the ranch books and maybe teach my son to read properly. He's 8 and smart as a whip, but I haven't had time to see to his education properly." "You have a son?" Eleanor asked. "Yes, Madam Samuel." A hint of pride crept into his voice. "Ranch hands look after him when I'm away, but he needs proper care." "And how long will we be bound to you?" Rebecca asked directly. Larson was quiet for a long moment, the only sounds the creaking of the wagon and the steady clop of hooves. "The papers say 5 years," he finally answered, "but I want to be clear about something right now." He pulled the horses to a stop and turned to face them fully. "I didn't buy you to own you. I needed help on the ranch and you needed a way out of a bad situation. When we reach Double L, both of you will have proper rooms, regular meals, and fair treatment. You'll work hard, but so does everyone at the ranch, myself included." His earnest tone surprised Rebecca, but she'd learned not to trust easily. "Why should we believe you?" Instead of taking offense, he seemed to appreciate her directness. "You shouldn't, not yet. Words are cheap, but you'll see for yourselves soon enough." He paused, then added, "Both of you are family now as far as I'm concerned. That's how we treat people at the Double L." Eleanor's eyes widened at his words, and even Rebecca felt a cautious spark of hope. Before either could respond, he clicked to the horses and set them moving again. As the wagon rolled on through the gathering dusk, Rebecca found herself studying this unexpected benefactor. His hands were calloused from work, his clothes plain but well-maintained. There was a quiet strength about him that came from something deeper than his physical presence. "Is there family waiting for you at the ranch?" Eleanor ventured after a while. "Besides your son," a shadow passed over Owen's face. "No, madam. My wife, Catherine, died of fever 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," Eleanor said softly. "Thank you." He cleared his throat. "There are 4 ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse, good men, all of them. And Mrs. Whitaker comes from town once a week to help with washing." As darkness fell, lanterns appeared in the distance, marking their destination. The Double L Ranch emerged from the shadows, a substantial 2-story house built of solid timber, a large barn, and several outbuildings. Light glowed from the windows, warm and inviting against the cool night air. As they pulled up to the house, the front door burst open and a small figure raced down the steps. "Pa, you're back." Owen's face transformed with a smile as he set the brake and jumped down to catch the boy in a hug. "Samuel, you're supposed to be in bed, young man." "Mr. Daniels said I could wait up," the boy explained, then peered curiously at the wagon. "Who are they?" Owen turned toward Rebecca and Eleanor as they descended from the wagon. "Samuel, this is Mrs. Jenkins and her daughter, Miss Jenkins. They'll be staying with us now." "Ladies, this is my son, Samuel." The boy regarded them with open curiosity. With his father's green eyes and a mop of brown hair, he had the look of a child raised outdoors, tanned skin, scuffed hands, and clothes that had seen hard play. Are you going to be my new teacher?" He asked Rebecca directly. "I believe so," she answered, surprising herself with a small smile. "Do you know about dinosaur bones? Mr. Daniels has been reading to me about them from the newspaper." "Samuel," Owen chided gently, "let them get settled first before you start with your questions." A weathered man in his 50s emerged from the house, nodding respectfully to the newcomers. "Got supper waiting, boss. Figure these ladies could use a hot meal." "Thank you, Daniels." Owen turned to Rebecca and Eleanor. "Come inside. We'll get you settled and fed, and tomorrow will be soon enough to sort everything else out." The interior of the ranch house surprised Rebecca. She had expected a bachelor's sparse quarters, but instead found a well-maintained home with solid furniture, clean floors, and walls adorned with a few simple paintings. The large front room had comfortable chairs gathered around a stone fireplace, shelves of books and oil lamps casting a warm glow. Mr. Daniels, who Rebecca learned was the ranch foreman, had prepared a hearty stew with fresh bread. As they sat around the large kitchen table, Rebecca observed Owen with his son, noting the easy affection between them and the way the boy clearly adored his father. After they'd eaten, Owen showed them to their rooms upstairs. "These haven't been used in a while," he explained, "but the linens are clean. Bathrooms down the hall, we've got indoor plumbing, which is something of a luxury out here." Eleanor's room was simple but comfortable, with a bed, dresser, and small writing desk beneath a window overlooking the front of the property. Rebecca's adjoining room was similar, though with a bookshelf containing several volumes. "I'll have some of Catherine's old clothes brought up for you tomorrow," Owen said. "They might need adjusting, but they'll do until we can get to town for proper things." "Mr. Larson," Eleanor began hesitantly, "I don't know how to thank you." He shook his head. "No need for thanks." "And it's just Owen." His eyes met Rebecca's briefly. "Get some rest. Morning comes early on a ranch." After he left, Rebecca sat on the edge of her bed, trying to process the dramatic turn her life had taken in a single day. "What do you make of him?" Eleanor asked softly from the doorway connecting their rooms. Rebecca considered the question carefully. "I don't know yet. He seems decent enough, but we've been deceived before." "We have," Eleanor agreed, her expression somber as she surely recalled her late husband's business partner, whose false friendship had ultimately led to their ruin after his death. "But I think he might be sincere." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Perhaps. But we should be cautious, all the same." Her mother smiled faintly. "Always my practical girl. Try to sleep, Rebecca. Tomorrow will bring what it brings." Left alone, Rebecca crossed to the window and looked out at the vast Wyoming night. Stars scattered across the black sky like diamonds on velvet, more than she had ever seen back east. The land stretched endlessly around them, beautiful and wild and uncertain. She had no illusions about their situation. Despite Owen Larson's kind words, they were still essentially his property for the next 5 years. Yet something about the ranch, about the man himself, gave her reason for cautious hope. If nothing else, they had a roof over their heads and food in their bellies more than they'd had yesterday. Turning from the window, Rebecca noticed a small frame on the bookshelf containing a pencil sketch of a smiling woman with kind eyes. Catherine Larson, she presumed. The woman whose clothes she would wear, whose home she now inhabited. Rebecca wondered what she had been like, this woman who had shared Owen Larson's life and given him a son. With a sigh, she prepared for bed, grateful for the clean nightgown someone had left folded on the pillow. As exhaustion finally claimed her, Rebecca's last thought was of green eyes regarding her with unexpected kindness amid the cruelty of an auction block. Dawn broke clear and cool over the Double L Ranch, the first rays of sunlight streaming through Rebecca's window. For a disorienting moment, she didn't recognize her surroundings, but memory quickly returned. She dressed in her worn dress, the only clothing she currently possessed, and found her mother already awake and smoothing down her own rumpled attire. "I heard movement downstairs," Eleanor said. "I think the household is already active." Following the sounds and smells of breakfast, they made their way to the kitchen where they found Owen at the stove, frying bacon while Samuel set the table. Good morning, Owen greeted them. Hope you slept well. Coffee's hot if you want some. I can take over cooking, Eleanor offered immediately. Owen shook his head. Your guests today, tomorrow we'll talk about duties and such. Guests. Rebecca couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. Seems only fair to give you a day to get your bearings, he replied, sliding bacon onto a platter. Samuel, go tell Mr. Daniels and the boys breakfast is ready. The boy dashed out, and soon the kitchen filled with men Mr. Daniels, whom they'd met the night before, and 3 ranch hands who were introduced as Cooper, Fernandez, and McAllister. The men were polite but clearly curious about the newcomers. Over breakfast, Owen explained the workings of the ranch. They ran cattle primarily, with some horses, on nearly 10,000 acres of Wyoming grassland. The operation employed the 4 men year-round, with additional help during roundup and branding. Might not look like much compared to some spreads, he said, but it's good land and we manage it well. After the men departed for their day's work, Owen addressed Rebecca and her mother more directly. I meant what I said about you being family now, he said, refilling their coffee cups. This is your home for as long as you wish it to be. There are expectations. Of course, we all work hard here, but you'll be treated with respect. Eleanor nodded. What exactly will you require of us? As I mentioned yesterday, the house needs looking after, cooking, cleaning, that sort of thing. The men handle their own quarters in the bunkhouse, but this place. He gestured around. It could use a woman's touch, and Samuel needs proper schooling. I'd be happy to teach him, Rebecca said, glancing at the boy who was listening intently. What subjects have you covered so far? Reading some and figures, Samuel answered. Pa taught me, but he's busy lots of times. I've done my best, Owen admitted, but it's been haphazard. He's bright, though, picks things up quick. May I ask, Rebecca ventured carefully, what happened to bring us to that auction block? I understand if you'd rather not discuss it. Owen considered for a moment. Wyoming territory's growing fast. Not everything keeps pace with that growth, including the law. Some creditors have taken to using indenture contracts to settle debts when cash isn't available. It's a practice I find distasteful, but it's not exactly illegal yet. It's slavery by another name, Rebecca said flatly. In many cases, yes, he agreed, surprising her with his candor. Though technically, the contracts have time limits and certain protections. Not that those protections mean much out here away from courts and marshals. Then why participate in it at all? Eleanor asked. Sometimes the lesser evil is the only choice available, Owen replied. You are going to be sold regardless. At least here you'll be treated fairly. He paused, then added, I've purchased contracts before 3 men who now own their own businesses in town. Ask around when you get the chance. Rebecca studied him, trying to reconcile this thoughtful man with the system he claimed to despise yet participated in. You could have just hired help. Tried that? Twice, he said with a wry smile. Young women don't stay long on isolated ranches. They marry or move on to towns with more prospects. Can't blame them. He stood, effectively ending the conversation. I've had some trunks brought down from the attic. Catherine's clothes should fit you reasonably well, Mrs. Jenkins. Miss Jenkins, you might find some of her younger things suitable. Feel free to alter what you need. After he left, Rebecca and Eleanor exchanged glances. What do you make of that? Eleanor asked quietly. I'm not sure, Rebecca admitted. He seems honest, at least. Samuel, who had been quietly listening to the adult conversation, piped up. Pa's the best man in the whole territory. Everybody says so. Rebecca couldn't help smiling at his earnest defense. Is that so? Uh-huh. He helped Mr. Cooper when his horse threw him and broke his leg, and he let the Millers stay in our north pasture cabin all winter when their farm burned down. Samuel, Owen called from outside, come help with the new calf. The boy jumped up excitedly. Coming, Pa. He dashed for the door, then paused to look back at Rebecca. Will we have lessons later? Tomorrow, she promised. We'll start properly tomorrow. After he left, Rebecca and Eleanor spent the morning exploring the house and examining the clothing Owen had mentioned. The trunks contained well-made dresses, skirts, and blouses that, while a few years out of fashion, were of good quality. She had good taste, Eleanor commented, holding up a deep blue dress against herself. Rebecca nodded, fingering a cream-colored blouse with delicate embroidery. And skill with a needle. Look at this detail work. By afternoon, they had each selected several outfits that could be adjusted to fit them. Rebecca found herself growing curious about the woman who had owned these clothes, the previous mistress of this house, whose life had been cut short. That evening, after a dinner she and her mother prepared despite Owen's protests, Rebecca found herself on the front porch watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in hues of gold and purple. The vastness of the landscape still took her breath away after the more confined spaces of Missouri. "It never gets old," Owen said, stepping onto the porch with 2 cups of coffee. He offered one to Rebecca, who accepted it with murmured thanks. "It's beautiful," she agreed, "different from home." "Where was home?" he asked, leaning against the porch railing, a small farm outside St. Louis. "Nothing as grand as this." "Grand," he chuckled. "Most folks would call this isolated and primitive compared to city living." "Perhaps," Rebecca conceded, "but there's something honest about it. The land doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is." Owen studied her with interest. "That's an unusual observation." Rebecca sipped her coffee, gathering her thoughts. "Mr. Larson, Owen, please." "Owen," she amended. "I appreciate what you've done for us, but I need to understand our situation clearly. Despite your kindness, the fact remains that you own our labor for the next 5 years. That's an uncomfortable reality." He was quiet for a long moment, watching the fading light. "I understand your discomfort. The papers I signed give me certain legal rights, yes. But I want you to know something. I consider those papers a formality, nothing more. You and your mother are free to leave any time you wish." Rebecca turned to look at him in surprise. "What? You heard me," he said simply. "I won't hold anyone here against their will, never have, never will. If you decide the double L isn't where you want to be, I'll tear up the contract myself." "But you paid $500, he shrugged. "Money well spent if it kept you and your mother from worse fates, regardless of whether you stay." Rebecca was speechless. In her experience, men didn't simply disregard legal claims to valuable property, and that's what she and her mother were, technically speaking. "Why would you do that?" she finally asked. Owen turned to face her fully, his expression serious in the fading light. "Because forcing someone to stay makes them a prisoner, not family. And I meant what I said yesterday. Both of you are family now if you choose to be." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Rebecca found herself believing him despite her natural caution. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more than I can express." Owen nodded, seeming almost embarrassed by her gratitude. "Well, it's getting late. Samuel will be eager for his first proper lesson tomorrow." As he turned to go inside, Rebecca called after him. "Owen," he paused, looking back. "Your wife," Rebecca said hesitantly. "What was she like?" A sad smile touched his lips. "Catherine was the bravest person I ever knew. Followed me out here from Boston when this was nothing but open range and a dream. Never complained even when winters got harsh and comforts were few." His voice softened. "She loved to read poetry aloud in the evenings, had a laugh that could make flowers grow," Samuel always said. The raw emotion in his voice made Rebecca's chest tighten. "You must miss her terribly." "Every day," he admitted, "but Samuel has her spirit, and that's a blessing." He bid her good night and went inside, leaving Rebecca to contemplate this unexpected man and the life that now stretched before her not as a bound servant, but as someone offered the dignity of choice. The next morning, Rebecca rose early, determined to earn her place in this household. She chose one of Catherine's simpler dresses that she had adjusted the previous day, a sage green cotton that complemented her auburn hair. The fit wasn't perfect, but it was far better than her travel-worn garment. In the kitchen, her mother was already preparing breakfast, looking more at ease in a navy blue skirt and white blouse from the trunk. "You look lovely, dear," Eleanor said when Rebecca entered. "As do you, mother." Rebecca tied an apron around her waist and moved to help. "Have you seen Owen this morning?" He and the men left at dawn, something about checking fence lines in the north pasture. "Samuel is still asleep." Rebecca nodded, realizing she'd need to establish a routine for the boys' lessons. "I should explore the house properly today, see what might serve as a schoolroom." There's a small study off the main room, Eleanor suggested. It has a desk that might work well. After breakfast, Rebecca investigated the study and found it perfect for their needs: a solid desk, bookshelves with various volumes including some basic primers, and large windows providing good light. She was arranging things when Samuel appeared, his hair still mussed from sleep. "Are we having lessons now?" he asked eagerly. "First, breakfast and proper grooming," Rebecca replied with gentle firmness. "Then we'll begin." The morning passed quickly as Rebecca assessed Samuel's knowledge. He read reasonably well for his age, though with some hesitation on longer words. His arithmetic was functional but basic, and his knowledge of geography limited mostly to Wyoming territory and surrounding areas. "Your father has taught you well," Rebecca told him. "Now we'll build on that foundation." By lunchtime, they had established a learning plan that seemed to excite rather than intimidate the boy. Samuel proved to be naturally curious, asking thoughtful questions that suggested a quick mind. "My pa says learning never stops, even for grown-ups," he informed Rebecca seriously as they put away the books. "Your pa is a wise man," she replied, surprised by the warmth that accompanied the statement. After lunch, Rebecca helped her mother with household tasks, cataloging what supplies they had and what might be needed. The pantry was well stocked with basics, and the root cellar contained preserved vegetables and fruits, but Eleanor noted several items that would improve their meal preparations. "We should make a list for when someone goes to town," Eleanor suggested. "Flour, sugar, coffee, perhaps some spices." "I'll add paper and ink for Samuel's lessons," Rebecca said, "and perhaps fabric for new curtains. These are beginning to fade." They were discussing these plans when hoofbeats announced Owen's return. Rebecca went to the door, surprised by her eagerness to share the day's progress with him. Owen dismounted with the easy grace of a man who'd spent most of his life on horseback. Dust covered his clothes, and a day's worth of stubble darkened his jaw, but his smile when he spotted Rebecca was warm. "How was your first day as a teacher?" he asked, removing his hat as he approached the porch. "Promising," she replied. "Your son has a good mind. With consistent instruction, he'll thrive." Owen's expression softened with obvious pride. "Glad to hear it. Where is the young scholar now?" "With my mother in the garden. She's showing him how to tell which vegetables are ready for picking." Owen nodded approvingly. "Practical knowledge is just as important as book learning out here." He hesitated, then added, "I'm riding into Buffalo tomorrow for supplies. If you and your mother have any requests, I'd be happy to bring them back." Rebecca retrieved the list they'd been working on. "We were just discussing that." He scanned the paper, nodding. "All reasonable. I'll add these to my list." His eyes met hers briefly. "That dress suits you." The unexpected compliment brought warmth to Rebecca's cheeks. "Thank you. Your wife had excellent taste." Something flickered in his eyes, grief, perhaps, or memory, but his voice remained steady. She would have been pleased to see her things put to good use. That evening, after Samuel had been tucked into bed, Rebecca found Owen in the study examining the materials she'd arranged for lessons. "I hope you don't mind my repurposing this room," she said from the doorway. He looked up, shaking his head. "Not at all. It's been sitting empty mostly. Catherine used to use it for correspondence, but since then..." He shrugged. "Better to have it serving a purpose again." Rebecca entered, running her fingers along the spines of the books she'd organized on the shelf. "You have quite a collection, not what I expected on a remote ranch." "Catherine insisted," he explained. "Said we might be far from civilization, but that didn't mean we needed to be uncivilized." A small smile touched his lips. She wrote to booksellers in Denver and San Francisco regularly. Packages of books were her greatest joy. "She sounds remarkable," Rebecca said softly. She was. Owen's gaze drifted to a small portrait on the wall, the same woman Rebecca had seen sketched in the frame in her room, strong in all the ways that mattered out here. "May I ask how she died?" Rebecca ventured carefully. Pain shadowed his features. "Fever. It swept through the county 2 summers ago, took Catherine and 4 others from nearby ranches. The doctor from Buffalo came, but..." He shook his head. "Nothing could be done." "I'm sorry," Rebecca said, meaning it. "Losing someone you love is never easy." No, he agreed quietly, it isn't. After a moment, he seemed to shake off the melancholy. But life continues. Samuel needs raising, the ranch needs running. And you? Rebecca asked. What do you need? The question seemed to surprise him. Me, I'm fine. Rebecca didn't press, but she wondered if anyone had asked after his well-being since his wife's death. From what she'd observed, Owen Larson was the one everyone else leaned on: his son, his workers, perhaps even neighbors, who supported him. Well, she said practically, your son is receiving a proper education now, and your house will be better managed with my mother's help. That's something, at least. He smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face, making him look younger. It's more than something, Miss Jenkins. It's a blessing we didn't expect. Rebecca, she corrected him. If I'm to call you Owen, then you should use my given name. Rebecca, he repeated, the name sounding somehow different in his voice. Thank you for what you're doing for Samuel. He needs more than I can give him alone. Children need different kinds of guidance, she replied. You're teaching him to be a good man by example. I'm just filling in the gaps with reading and arithmetic. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Rebecca felt a strange connection to this quiet, honorable man who had rescued them from an uncertain fate. Something shifted between them, subtle, almost imperceptible, but real nonetheless. Owen broke the moment first, clearing his throat. I should turn in. Early start tomorrow for town. Of course, Rebecca stepped aside to let him pass. Good night, Owen. Good night, Rebecca. As his footsteps receded down the hallway, Rebecca remained in the study, her thoughts in unexpected turmoil. She had come to the Double L as little more than property. Yet in just 2 days, Owen Larson had treated her with more respect than most free women could expect. It was dangerous, she knew, to feel anything beyond gratitude toward the man who technically owned her labor. Yet there was something about Owen that spoke to her in ways she hadn't anticipated: his quiet strength, his devotion to his son, the grief he carried without complaint. Rebecca sighed, extinguishing the lamp before making her way upstairs. Whatever these feelings might be, she would need to guard them carefully. 5 years was a long time to live under the same roof as a man who stirred such confusing emotions. The days at the Double L settled into a rhythm as spring blossomed across the Wyoming landscape. Rebecca established regular lessons with Samuel each morning, followed by helping her mother with household tasks in the afternoons. Eleanor had taken over the kitchen completely, her cooking winning enthusiastic praise from the ranch hands. Owen departed for Buffalo as planned and returned with everything on their list, plus several surprises: fabric for new dresses, ribbons, a set of hairpins for each of them, and books for both Samuel's education and Rebecca's personal enjoyment. You didn't need to bring gifts, Rebecca had protested when he presented her with a copy of Tennyson's poems. Not gifts, he'd corrected her, necessities. Can't have a teacher without proper books. By the end of their first month at the ranch, both Rebecca and Eleanor had begun to relax into their new roles. The work was hard but satisfying, and the atmosphere at the Double L was one of mutual respect rather than servitude. One warm afternoon in late May, Rebecca was hanging laundry when Owen rode in with Samuel perched in front of him on the saddle, both of them grinning widely. Look, Miss Rebecca, Samuel called excitedly as Owen helped him down. Pa showed me how to track deer today, did he now? Rebecca smiled at the boy's enthusiasm. And were you successful? Found a whole family of them drinking at the creek, Owen said, ruffling his son's hair. Samuel stayed quiet as a mouse, didn't spook them at all. I saw the fawn up close, Samuel added. It had spots all over. That sounds wonderful, Rebecca said. Perhaps you could draw what you saw for your lessons tomorrow. Samuel nodded eagerly before racing off to tell Mr. Daniels about his adventure. Owen lingered, helping Rebecca hang the remaining sheets on the line. You don't have to do that, she protested mildly. I know, he replied, securing a corner against the breeze. But my mother taught me that no honest work is beneath anyone. Rebecca studied him as they worked. Over the past weeks, she'd come to appreciate Owen's straightforward nature. He never pretended to be anything other than what he was: a hard-working rancher devoted to his land and his son. Samuel adores you, she observed. His eyes light up whenever you enter a room. A faint smile touched Owen's lips. He's a good boy, makes it easy to love him. He talks about you constantly during lessons. Pa says this and Pa showed me that. Hope I'm not undermining your authority, Owen said, looking concerned. Rebecca laughed. Not at all. In fact, it helps. Your father would want you to practice your letters properly works wonders when he gets restless. They shared a smile, and Rebecca felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. Over the weeks, these moments had become more frequent small, shared jokes about Samuel's antics, discussions about books they'd both read, quiet conversations on the porch after the boy was asleep. Rebecca, Owen began, then hesitated. I wanted to ask whatever he intended to say was interrupted by Mr. Daniels calling from the corral. Boss, that new stallion's acting up again, Owen sighed. Duty calls, we'll talk later, Rebecca nodded, watching him stride away. Something had changed between them, subtle but undeniable. She found herself looking forward to their conversations, treasuring the moments when his guard lowered enough to reveal the thoughtful, sometimes even humorous man beneath the responsible rancher exterior. That evening, a spring thunderstorm rolled across the plains, bringing much-needed rain but also spectacular lightning that had Samuel peering nervously from the window. Will it hit the house? He asked as a particularly bright flash illuminated the night sky. Very unlikely, Rebecca assured him. The lightning rod your father installed on the roof will protect us. Are you certain? Samuel pressed. Rebecca pulled him gently away from the window. I promise. Now, how about we read another chapter before bed? The storm will seem less frightening if you're thinking about something else. They settled on the sofa, Samuel leaning against her side as she read from The Swiss Family Robinson. The boy's fascination with the castaway's adventures soon overcame his fear of the storm. Owen found them there when he came in from securing the barn, soaked from the rain but smiling at the peaceful tableau they presented. Enjoying the story? He asked, removing his wet coat. Samuel nodded enthusiastically. They just found a giant turtle, but it's bedtime now. He looked disappointed at the interruption. The turtle will still be there tomorrow, Rebecca promised, marking their place in the book. I'll take him up, Owen offered. Get him dried off and tucked in. After they'd gone upstairs, Rebecca stoked the fire and brought a towel for Owen's hair. When he returned, she handed it to him with a smile. Thank you, he said, running it over his damp head. Samuel wants you to come say goodnight when you have a moment. Of course. She turned to go, but Owen gently caught her arm. Rebecca, about earlier what I wanted to ask. She looked up at him expectantly, aware of his hand on her arm and the warmth it generated even through the fabric of her sleeve. There's a social in Buffalo next Saturday, he said. Dancing, food, that sort of thing. The whole ranch usually gives everyone a chance to socialize a bit. I was hoping you and your mother would join us. A social? Rebecca hadn't considered such normal activities might still be part of their lives. Yes, everyone from the surrounding ranches will be there, he paused. It would mean a lot to Samuel, to all of us. Rebecca considered the invitation. A public event would mean meeting the neighbors, establishing themselves as part of the community rather than just servants at the Double L. I'd like that, she said. I'm sure Mother would as well. Relief crossed Owen's features. Good, that's good. He seemed about to say more but instead cleared his throat. I should get some dry clothes. Good night, Rebecca. Good night, Owen. As promised, Rebecca went upstairs to say good night to Samuel, finding him already drowsy in his bed. Miss Rebecca, he murmured sleepily, will you always stay with us? The innocent question caught her off guard. Well, your father has been kind enough to give us a home here for now. But after, Samuel persisted, when the paper time is done. Rebecca realized the boy understood more about their situation than she'd thought. That's a long way off, Samuel, but I promise, no matter what happens, I'll always be your friend. This seemed to satisfy him, and he drifted off to sleep. Rebecca watched him for a moment, her heart constricting at the thought of eventually leaving this child who had become so dear to her in such a short time. And not just Samuel, she admitted to herself as she made her way back downstairs. The thought of leaving the Double L, of leaving Owen, was increasingly difficult to contemplate. The week leading up to the social was filled with preparations. Eleanor altered one of Catherine's better dresses for herself, a deep burgundy that complemented her silver-streaked dark hair. For Rebecca, they reworked a pale blue gown with delicate white embroidery around the collar and cuffs. "You look beautiful," Eleanor said as Rebecca tried on the finished dress the night before the social. "That color brings out your eyes." Rebecca smoothed the fabric, turning to examine her reflection in the small mirror. "Do you think it's appropriate? I don't want to seem presumptuous." "Presumptuous? By wearing a pretty dress to a social," Eleanor shook her head. "Rebecca, we may have had a difficult journey to get here, but we are not servants or slaves. Owen has made that clear from the beginning." "I know," Rebecca sighed, "but others might not understand. They'll have heard we were purchased at auction." "Let them talk," Eleanor said firmly. "We'll hold our heads high and show them what kind of women we are through our actions and character." Rebecca smiled at her mother's spirit. "When did you become so fierce?" "I've always been fierce, dear. I just haven't had much opportunity to show it these past few years." The morning of the social dawned clear and bright. The entire ranch buzzed with anticipation, the hands polishing their boots and pressing their best shirts, Samuel bouncing with excitement at the prospect of town and treats. Owen had arranged for the large wagon to transport everyone, with hay bales covered in blankets serving as comfortable seating. By mid-morning they were on their way, the spring countryside vibrant around them. Rebecca found herself seated beside Owen, who handled the team of 4 horses with confident ease. Samuel chattered between them, pointing out landmarks along the way and asking if there would be pie at the social. "There's always pie," Owen assured him. "Mrs. Henderson's apple if we're lucky." Buffalo had grown since Rebecca's brief glimpse of it 2 months earlier. New buildings were going up along the main street, and the town bustled with activity. The social was being held in the newly completed meeting hall, a large building at the center of town already decorated with bunting and flowers. As they pulled up, Rebecca felt a flutter of nervousness. This would be her first real interaction with the larger community, and first impressions mattered. Owen seemed to sense her apprehension. As he helped her down from the wagon, he murmured, "You'll be fine. They're good people mostly." "Mostly?" she questioned with a raised eyebrow. A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Well, every town has its share of gossips and troublemakers, but they're outnumbered by the decent folk." Inside the hall, tables laden with food lined one wall, while a small group of musicians tuned instruments at the far end. People of all ages filled the space, from elderly couples to young families with children. Owen guided Rebecca and Eleanor through the crowd, making introductions. Most people were welcoming, though Rebecca noticed curious glances and whispered conversations following their passage. Owen Larson. A robust woman in her 50s approached, arms outstretched. "About time you showed your face in town again, Mrs. Henderson," Owen greeted her warmly. "May I introduce Mrs. Eleanor Jenkins and her daughter, Miss Rebecca Jenkins. They've recently joined us at the Double L. Ladies, this is Martha Henderson, maker of the finest pies in the territory and unofficial mayor of Buffalo." "Such flattery," Mrs. Henderson laughed, then studied Rebecca and Eleanor with frank interest. "Jenkins, is it? Welcome to Buffalo. We're always glad to see new faces, especially women. The territory has far too many unmarried men for comfort." "Thank you," Eleanor replied with a gracious smile. "Everyone has been very kind." "Well, not everyone has Owen Larson's reputation for decency," Mrs. Henderson said with surprising directness, "but you've landed in a good place." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "We've heard the circumstances. No judgment here. Many of us came west with nothing but hope and ended up finding more than we bargained for." Her frank acknowledgement of their situation, delivered without pity or censure, eased some of Rebecca's tension. If the town's influential matron was publicly accepting them, others would likely follow her lead. The afternoon progressed pleasantly. Samuel found friends his age, and Eleanor was soon deep in conversation with a group of ranch wives exchanging recipes and household tips. Rebecca found herself surrounded by young women eager for news from back east, even though St. Louis hardly qualified as Eastern to her mind. "Is it true you're teaching Owen's boy?" one young woman named Abigail asked. "You must be very educated." "My father was a teacher," Rebecca explained. "He ensured I had a thorough education." "Lucky," Abigail sighed. "My pa thought reading and figures were enough for a girl, anything more was putting on airs." The conversation turned to books, and Rebecca was surprised to discover a small but dedicated literary circle existed among the women of Buffalo. They met monthly to discuss whatever reading material made its way west, from novels to scientific journals. "You must join us," Abigail insisted. "Our next meeting is in 3 weeks at Mrs. Thompson's house. Owen knows the way." The easy inclusion in this social circle touched Rebecca deeply. For the first time since arriving in Wyoming, she felt the possibility of a life beyond the confines of her unusual circumstances, friends, community, purpose. As the afternoon wore on, the musicians struck up lively tunes and dancing began. Rebecca watched from the sidelines as couples filled the floor, including several of the double L hands who had found willing partners among the local girls. "May I have this dance?" She turned to find Owen beside her, hand extended. Her heart gave an unexpected leap at the sight of him, freshly shaved and dressed in clean clothes, his usually wind-blown hair tamed for the occasion. "I'm not certain I remember the steps," she admitted. "It's been some time since I attended a dance." "It's nothing complicated," he assured her. "And I promise not to step on your toes, too often anyway." With a smile, she placed her hand in his and allowed him to lead her onto the floor. The music was a simple waltz, and Owen proved to be a competent if not graceful dancer. His hand at her waist was warm and steady, and he maintained a proper distance between them while guiding her confidently through the turns. "You dance well for a rancher," she observed, relaxing into the rhythm. "Catherine insisted I learn," he explained. "Said no son of hers would grow up without knowing how to properly escort a lady across a dance floor." "She was wise," Rebecca said. "Samuel will thank her someday." As they moved around the floor, Rebecca became aware of glances and whispers from the sidelines. Not all were friendly. "People are talking," she murmured. Owen's hand tightened slightly on hers. "People always talk, especially when they've nothing better to do. They're wondering about my position at the double L." "Let them wonder," he said firmly. "What happens at my ranch is my business, not theirs." The protective edge in his voice warmed her, even as she recognized the complications their unusual situation created. A man dancing with a woman he technically owned would naturally inspire gossip, regardless of the reality of their arrangement. As the music ended, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. A group of men had entered, loud and already showing signs of having visited the saloon before the social. Among them, Rebecca recognized the bearded man from the auction Haggerty. Owen noticed her tension. "What is it?" "That man," she nodded discreetly. "He was at the auction. He bid against you." Owen's expression hardened as he spotted Haggerty. "Jed Haggerty runs a small ranch south of here, best avoided. Too late for that," Rebecca murmured as Haggerty's gaze found them across the room. Recognition followed by an unpleasant smile crossed his face. "Larson," he called loudly enough to draw attention, "brought your purchase to show off, did you?" A hush fell over the nearby dancers. Owen stepped slightly in front of Rebecca, his posture protective. "Haggerty." "You're interrupting a pleasant afternoon." Haggerty swaggered forward, his friends hanging back but watching with anticipation, just making conversation, wondering how that indenture contract's working out. His eyes roved over Rebecca in a way that made her skin crawl. "Getting your money's worth, are you?" Owen's voice dropped dangerously low. "You're drunk, Haggerty. Go home before you say something you'll regret." "Truth hurts, don't it?" Haggerty sneered. "You can dress her up fancy, but everybody knows what she is, property, plain and simple." "Just like her ma." Rebecca felt Owen tense beside her, his hand moving instinctively toward his hip where his gun would normally be, though he'd left it in the wagon for the social. "That's enough," Mr. Daniel stepped forward, flanked by the other double L hands. "You're outnumbered, Haggerty." "Best move along." Haggerty glanced at the ranch hands, then at the crowd watching with disapproval. Even his own friends seemed uncomfortable with the public confrontation. "Another time then," he muttered, backing away. "Enjoy your dancing, Larson. Just remember what you paid for." As Haggerty retreated to the far side of the hall, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Rebecca felt heat rise in her cheeks at being the center of such unwanted attention. "I'm sorry," Owen said quietly. "I should have expected something like this." "It's not your fault," Rebecca assured him, though her hands trembled slightly. "He's just a cruel man." "Miss Jenkins," Mrs. Henderson appeared at her elbow, her voice carrying deliberately, "would you join our refreshment committee? We need someone with an educated eye to arrange the dessert table properly." The older woman's intervention was clearly intended to normalize the situation, to demonstrate publicly that Rebecca was accepted as a respectable member of the community. With a grateful smile, Rebecca allowed herself to be led away. For the remainder of the afternoon, various townspeople made points of engaging Rebecca and Eleanor in conversation, a subtle but clear message to Haggerty and any like-minded individuals that the Jenkins women were under the community's protection. As the sun began to set, Owen gathered his party to return to the ranch. The ride home was quieter than the journey in, everyone tired from the day's activities. Samuel fell asleep against Rebecca's shoulder, and she found herself absently stroking his hair as the wagon rolled through the darkening landscape. "Did you enjoy yourself, despite the interruption?" Owen asked softly, mindful of the sleeping boy between them. "I did," Rebecca replied honestly. "Your neighbors are kind people for the most part. Buffalo's a young town still finding its character," Owen said, "but there are good folk here building something worthwhile." They rode in companionable silence for a while, the stars emerging overhead in the vast Wyoming sky. Rebecca found herself acutely aware of Owen beside her, the steady way he handled the team, the solid warmth of his presence, the profile of his face in the fading light. "Owen," she ventured finally, "what Haggerty said isn't worth dwelling on," he interrupted firmly. "The man's a fool." "Perhaps, but he wasn't entirely wrong, was he? Legally speaking, our position is complicated." Owen was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the trail ahead. "Legally, yes, but laws don't always reflect what's right. And what's right is treating people with dignity, regardless of circumstances." "Is that why you bought our contracts, out of a sense of what's right?" He glanced at her, his expression difficult to read in the gathering darkness. "Partly, but also because—" He hesitated. "Because when I saw you standing there with your mother, heads held high despite everything, I saw something I recognized. The same quiet strength Catherine had, the kind this land demands." The simple honesty of his words touched Rebecca deeply. She understood then that Owen had recognized something in her that day, not just a woman in need, but a kindred spirit of sorts. "Thank you," she said softly, "for seeing us as people worth saving." His hand found hers briefly in the darkness, a gentle squeeze before returning to the reins. "You weren't the only ones saved that day, Rebecca. The Double L needed you both more than you know." Summer settled over the Wyoming plains, bringing long days of endless blue skies and work that never seemed to diminish. June gave way to July, and the routine at the Double L continued. Samuel's education progressed steadily. Eleanor's garden flourished, and Rebecca found herself increasingly involved in the ranch's operations beyond the household. Her skill with numbers had proven valuable when Owen discovered she could keep the ranch books more efficiently than he ever had. What began as occasional assistance soon became a regular responsibility, with Rebecca spending evenings in the study recording expenses, calculating profits, and organizing the ranch's financial affairs. "You have a gift for this," Owen remarked one night as they reviewed the quarterly accounts together. "The books have never been so clear." Rebecca smiled, pleased by his appreciation of her work. "My father insisted I learn proper accounting. He said a woman should always understand money matters, regardless of whether she ever needed to manage them." "Wise man," Owen nodded. He leaned back in his chair, studying her thoughtfully. "You know, with your help, I'm thinking we might expand the operation." There's good grazing land to the east that's recently become available. The old Carson place, Rebecca asked, familiar with the neighboring properties from the maps Owen had shown her. You've been paying attention, he smiled. Yes, 3,000 acres, good water access. Been sitting empty since Carson passed last winter. It would increase your herd capacity by nearly a third, Rebecca calculated quickly. The initial investment would be substantial, but with current beef prices. She flipped through the ledger, making rapid calculations. You could see returns within 2 years, possibly sooner. Owen watched her with undisguised admiration. I was thinking 3 years, but you're probably right. Their eyes met across the desk, and Rebecca felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. These moments had become more frequent looks that lingered, conversations that stretched late into the evening, accidental touches that sent warmth spiraling through her. I should turn in, she said abruptly, gathering her papers. It's getting late. Rebecca, Owen's voice stopped her as she reached the door. I've been meaning to ask you something. She turned, her heart suddenly racing. Yes, Samuel's birthday is next month. I thought we might have a small celebration, nothing elaborate, just something special for him. Would you help me plan it? Though not what she had half expected or perhaps hoped for, the request touched her. Of course, he'll be 9, correct, Owen nodded, relief evident in his expression. Thank you, I'm not much good at these things. Catherine always handled the celebrations. We'll make it memorable for him, Rebecca promised. Perhaps a picnic by the creek, he loves it there. Perfect, Owen agreed. Good night, Rebecca. Good night, Owen. As July progressed, the heat intensified, bringing thunderstorms that rolled across the plains in spectacular displays of nature's power. One particularly fierce storm caught Rebecca and Samuel returning from a nature study expedition along the creek. They ran for the shelter of the barn as the first heavy drops began to fall, reaching it just as the skies opened in a torrent. That was close, Samuel laughed, shaking water from his hat. Look, Miss Rebecca, you're soaked, Rebecca chuckled, wringing water from her skirt. So I am. At least we saved our specimens. She carefully placed their collection of interesting rocks and plant samples on a dry shelf. Thunder crashed overhead, and the barn door burst open as Owen rushed in, rain streaming from his slicker. There you are, he said, relief evident in his voice. I was worried when the storm hit so suddenly. We're fine, Rebecca assured him, just a little damp. Owen removed his slicker and draped it around her shoulders. This will help. The rain's coming in sideways now, we'll need to wait it out here. Samuel wandered off to check on his favorite horse, leaving Rebecca and Owen standing close together amid the sounds of rain pounding on the roof and nervous animals shifting in their stalls. You're shivering, Owen observed. I'm fine, Rebecca insisted, though she pulled his slicker tighter around herself, inhaling the scent of leather and pine that seemed uniquely his. Here, Owen reached out, gently brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered at her cheek, warm against her rain-chilled skin. Rebecca's breath caught as their eyes met. The air between them seemed charged with something more powerful than the lightning flashing outside. Owen's gaze dropped briefly to her lips before returning to her eyes, a question in his expression. Pa, Samuel called from across the barn. Come see. Sonny's new foal is trying to stand. The moment broke, and Owen stepped back, clearing his throat. Coming, son. Rebecca remained where she was, her heart pounding as if she'd run miles. What had almost happened? What would have happened if Samuel hadn't called out? The questions lingered as they waited out the storm, watching the foal's wobbly attempts to stand while Samuel offered enthusiastic encouragement. Owen kept a careful distance from Rebecca, though she caught him watching her when he thought she wouldn't notice. By the time the rain subsided enough for them to dash to the house, Rebecca had convinced herself she'd imagined the tension between them. Owen Larson was her benefactor, her employer in all practical terms. Whatever feelings might be developing were surely one-sided, a natural but inappropriate attachment to the man who had rescued her from a desperate situation. Yet that night, as she prepared for bed, a knock sounded on her door. When she opened it, Owen stood in the hallway, holding a book. I thought you might like this, he said, offering her the volume. It's Emerson's essays. Catherine enjoyed them greatly. Rebecca accepted the book, their fingers brushing in the exchange. Thank you, that's very thoughtful. I noticed you finished the Tennyson, he explained, seeming almost nervous. And you mentioned enjoying philosophy during our discussions. I do, she confirmed, touched that he remembered such a small detail from their conversations. This is perfect. Owen nodded, looking as if he wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. Well, good night then. Good night, Owen. After he left, Rebecca examined the book, finding a pressed flower marking one of the essays, Self-Reliance. A note in feminine handwriting adorned the margin. For remember always to trust your heart's wisdom. See, Catherine's note to her husband, intimate and loving. Rebecca felt like an intruder suddenly, holding this tangible piece of their relationship. Yet Owen had chosen to share it with her, a gesture that seemed to carry significance beyond the simple lending of a book. She fell asleep that night with Emerson's words in her mind and confusion in her heart. What was developing between her and Owen was complicated by their circumstances, by the ghost of Catherine that lingered in the house, and by the legal reality of their arrangement. Yet denying the growing connection between them was becoming increasingly difficult. August brought Samuel's birthday, and with it, the celebration Rebecca had helped plan. The entire ranch gathered at the creek for a picnic feast prepared by Eleanor fried chicken, potato salad, fresh bread, and a special apple cake that had Samuel nearly bouncing with excitement. "Can I open my presents now, Pa?" the boy asked after devouring his second piece of cake. Owen laughed, ruffling his son's hair. "I suppose you've been patient enough." The ranch hands had pooled their resources to give Samuel a handsome pocket knife, a man's tool, Mr. Daniels explained seriously, to be used responsibly. Eleanor presented him with a hand-knitted sweater for the coming winter in his favorite blue color. "This is from me," Rebecca said, handing him a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a journal bound in soft leather, its pages blank and waiting. "For your observations about nature like the scientists we've been reading about," Samuel's eyes widened with delight. "My own scientific journal." "Thank you, Miss Rebecca." He threw his arms around her in an impulsive hug that warmed her heart. "My turn," Owen said when Samuel finally released Rebecca. He presented his son with a small wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of cloth, lay a silver pocket watch. "It was your grandfather's," Owen explained as Samuel stared at it in awe. "He gave it to me when I turned 9, and now it's yours." "A real watch," Samuel breathed, carefully lifting it from the box, "like a grown-up." "Being grown isn't about the things you carry," Owen said gently. "It's about how you care for others and fulfill your responsibilities. But this watch can remind you that each day is precious and not to waste the time we're given." Rebecca watched the exchange with a lump in her throat, struck by Owen's thoughtful parenting. In that moment, observing father and son together against the backdrop of the sparkling creek and blue Wyoming sky, she realized with startling clarity that she was falling in love with this family, with Samuel's bright spirit, with the ranch that had become home, and most dangerously, with Owen himself. The realization should have frightened her. Instead, it settled in her heart with a rightness that defied her attempts at practical thinking. Whatever came of these feelings, rejection, complication, or something she barely dared hope, for they were real and undeniable. The celebration continued into the afternoon with fishing, swimming in the creek's deeper pools, and stories around a small fire as the day cooled toward evening. Rebecca found herself seated beside Owen as the ranch hands entertained Samuel with tales of their adventures on cattle drives and in mining camps before coming to the Double L. "You've given him a wonderful birthday," Owen said quietly, his voice meant only for her ears. "Thank you." "It was a group effort," Rebecca demurred. "Perhaps, but you made it special." His hand found hers where it rested on the blanket between them, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture too deliberate to be accidental. "You've made many things special since you came to the Double L." Before Rebecca could respond, Samuel bounded over, dropping onto the blanket beside them. Owen released her hand, but the warmth of his touch lingered, as did the meaning behind his words. That night, after Samuel had been tucked into bed with his new treasures carefully arranged on his bedside table, Rebecca found Owen on the porch, gazing at the star-filled sky. "He's finally asleep," she reported, joining him at the railing. "Though I suspect he's still examining that watch by candlelight," Owen chuckled. "Probably. He's been asking for one since he saw Mr. Daniels's pocket watch last year." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the night air cool and fragrant with sage and pine. "Rebecca," Owen began, his voice low and serious, "there's something I need to say to you." Her heart quickened at his tone. "Yes, these past months, having you and your mother here, it's changed things, changed me." He turned to face her, his expression earnest in the soft light spilling from the house windows. "I know our situation is complicated, the contract, the legal aspects." "Owen," she interrupted gently, "the contract doesn't matter, not to me, not anymore." Hope flickered in his eyes. "What are you saying?" Rebecca took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I'm saying that I came here as someone purchased, yes, but that's not who I am now, not how I feel. I stay because I want to," because she hesitated, then pushed forward. "Because I care for Samuel, for the ranch, for you." Owen moved closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cool night air. "Rebecca, I never expected to feel this way again after Catherine died. Never thought I'd want to, but you—" His hand came up to cup her cheek gently. "You brought something back to life here. Not just in the house or in Samuel, but in me." Rebecca leaned slightly into his touch, her heart pounding. "Are you certain? Our circumstances, damn the circumstances," he said softly. "I know what I feel, I know what I see in you. The question is, can you care for a rough rancher with little to offer beyond hard work and a faithful heart?" In answer, Rebecca placed her hand over his where it rested against her cheek. "I already do." Owen's gaze dropped to her lips, and this time there was no interruption, no hesitation. He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, before pressing his lips gently to hers in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey. Rebecca responded with all the feelings she'd been holding back for months, the gratitude, the admiration, and most of all, the deep affection that had grown with each day at the Double L. Owen's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened, becoming a promise of something neither had expected to find. When they finally parted, Owen rested his forehead against hers, his breathing unsteady. "I should have done that months ago." Rebecca smiled, her fingers curled in the fabric of his shirt. "Perhaps we needed time to know this is real, not just gratitude or convenience. There's nothing convenient about falling in love with a woman as strong-minded as you," Owen teased gently, then grew serious again. "But it is real, Rebecca, more real than anything I've felt in years." The word love hung between them, momentous and yet somehow natural, like the final piece of a puzzle sliding into place. "Owen," she began, but was interrupted by the sound of the door opening behind them. "Rebecca." "Are you out here?" Eleanor's voice called softly. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt." Owen stepped back respectfully, though he kept one of Rebecca's hands in his. "You're not interrupting, Mrs. Jenkins. I was just thanking your daughter for making Samuel's birthday so special." The slight smile on Eleanor's face suggested she wasn't fooled by the explanation, but she merely nodded. "It was a lovely day. Samuel is a wonderful boy." "Thank you," Owen replied. "If you'll excuse me, I should check on the animals before turning in. Good night, ladies." After he left, Eleanor joined Rebecca at the railing. "So," she said after a moment of silence, "it seems things have progressed between you and Owen." Rebecca felt a blush warm her cheeks. "Yes, though I'm not entirely sure what happens next." Eleanor placed a gentle hand on her daughter's arm. "What do you want to happen next?" "I'm not sure that matters," Rebecca sighed. "Our situation is complicated. Legally, we're bound to him for nearly 5 more years." "Do you truly believe Owen sees it that way?" Eleanor asked. "That man has never treated us as anything but equals from the moment we arrived." "No," Rebecca admitted, "but others might. You heard Haggerty at the social." "There will always be small-minded people," Eleanor said firmly. "What matters is finding happiness where you can with people who value you for who you are." She squeezed Rebecca's hand. I've seen how he looks at you and how you look at him. I care for him, Rebecca confessed. More than I should, perhaps. Love isn't about should, dear, it simply is. Eleanor smiled gently. Catherine's been gone 2 years. Samuel needs a mother, and Owen needs a partner, someone who matches his strength and shares his vision for this place. You make it sound so simple. It isn't simple, Eleanor acknowledged, but it is right, I can feel it. And I think you can too. As summer gave way to autumn, the relationship between Rebecca and Owen deepened, though they were careful to be discreet around Samuel until they were more certain of their path forward. Their evenings often ended with conversations on the porch or in the study, sometimes with stolen kisses, always with the growing certainty that what they had found was worth pursuing despite the complications. One crisp September evening, as they walked together along the creek after dinner, Owen broached the subject that had been on both their minds. "Rebecca," he began, taking her hand, "I've been thinking about our situation." "As have I," she admitted. "The legal contract between us, it's a problem." "Not for me, but I know it troubles you. The idea that any part of our relationship might seem coerced." Rebecca nodded, appreciating his understanding. "It does concern me, not because I doubt your intentions, but because I want what's between us to be absolutely clear and free." Owen stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Then let me be absolutely clear. I love you, Rebecca Jenkins. Not as someone I purchased, not as an employee or a convenience, but as the woman who brought life and laughter back to my home, who teaches my son with patience and wisdom, who challenges me to be a better man." The simple declaration, delivered without flourish but with absolute sincerity, brought tears to Rebecca's eyes. "Owen, please, let me finish," he said gently. "Tomorrow I'm riding into Buffalo to see Judge Parker. I'm going to file papers nullifying the indenture contracts for both you and your mother. You'll be legally free with no obligations to me or the double L." Rebecca stared at him in shock. "But you paid, money well spent, regardless of what happens next," he interrupted. "But I'm hoping," he took a deep breath, "I'm hoping that once you're free in the eyes of the law, you might consider binding yourself to me in a different way, as my wife." The proposal, though not entirely unexpected given the direction of their relationship, still took Rebecca's breath away. "Owen, are you certain? What about Catherine?" A sad smile touched his lips. "Catherine once told me that if anything happened to her, she wouldn't want me to mourn forever. Life is for the living," she said. "She would have liked you, Rebecca. Your strength, your kindness with Samuel, your determination." He took both her hands in his. "I will always honor Catherine's memory. She gave me Samuel and years of happiness. But my heart has room for new love, a different love, but no less real. The question is, does yours?" Rebecca's answer came without hesitation. "Yes, I love you, Owen. I think I have since that day on the auction block when you looked at us and saw people, not property." The kiss they shared was tender and full of promise for a future neither had imagined possible months before. For a family forged not through blood, but through choice and circumstance and love. The announcement of the canceled contracts and upcoming wedding caused a stir in Buffalo, though less than might have been expected. Most of the community had already accepted the Jenkins women as respectable additions to the area, and Mrs. Henderson's vocal approval of the match silenced many potential critics. "About time," was the matron's assessment when Owen and Rebecca shared their news. "That boy needs a mother, and you two have been making eyes at each other since the spring social." The wedding was set for mid-October, when the fall cattle work would be complete, and before winter weather made travel difficult for guests. Eleanor threw herself into preparations with enthusiasm, while Samuel's excitement at officially gaining Rebecca as his mother knew no bounds. "Will I call you Ma now?" he asked her one afternoon as they worked on his lessons. Rebecca considered the question carefully. "That's entirely up to you, Samuel. I would be honored if you chose to, but I also understand that your mother will always be your mother." "Whatever feels right to you is what we'll do," Samuel nodded thoughtfully. "I don't remember my real Ma much, just her smile and her singing. Pa says you're not replacing her, just giving me a new Ma to love too." Rebecca's heart swelled at Owen's wise explanation to his son. Your father is a very smart man. I think I'll call you Ma, Samuel decided. But is it okay if I still talk about my first Ma sometimes? I don't want her to be forgotten. Rebecca gathered the boy into a tight hug. Samuel, we will never let her be forgotten. She'll always be part of our family, and we'll make sure her memory is honored. The wedding day dawned clear and cool, with aspen trees gilded in gold against the blue Wyoming sky. The ceremony was held at the Double L, with a local minister officiating and nearly the entire community in attendance. Eleanor, resplendent in a new dress Owen had insisted on purchasing for the occasion, stood beside Rebecca with proud tears in her eyes. Owen waited at the makeshift altar on the ranch house porch, Samuel fidgeting excitedly beside him as best man. When Rebecca appeared in a simple but elegant ivory dress, another of Owen's gifts, a hush fell over the gathered guests. The vows were traditional but spoken with deep sincerity. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Owen's kiss was both tender and possessive, drawing cheers from the ranch hands and delighted laughter from Samuel. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with food, music, and dancing under lanterns strung between the house and barn. As dusk fell, Rebecca found a quiet moment with her mother away from the festivities. "Are you happy, Mother?" she asked, watching Eleanor's face in the fading light. "I am," Eleanor assured her. "Seeing you settled with a good man brings me more joy than I can express. And having a home here, work that matters, people who value me, it's more than I dared hope for after your father died." "Owen says the Double L is as much yours as ours now," Rebecca reminded her. "You're not just family, you're a partner in this place." Eleanor smiled, patting her daughter's hand. "I know, dear, and I'm grateful. Now go back to your husband, he's looking for you." Indeed, Owen was scanning the crowd, his expression lighting when he spotted Rebecca. As she returned to his side, he drew her close, whispering, "Ready to escape yet, Mrs. Larson?" The new name sent a thrill through her. "What about our guests? They'll understand," he assured her with a smile. "Besides, your mother and Mr. Daniels have everything well in hand." With discreet farewells to key guests, they slipped away to the house, where Owen had prepared the master bedroom for their first night as husband and wife. The room had been completely refurnished, new curtains, new bedding, even new furniture that held no memories of his first marriage. "Owen," Rebecca breathed, taking in the transformation. "You did all this for me, for us," he corrected gently. "A fresh start, though Catherine's things are safely stored in the attic for Samuel when he's older." The thoughtfulness of the gesture, honoring the past while embracing their future, moved Rebecca deeply. "I love you," she said simply, turning into his embrace. "And I love you," he replied before claiming her lips in a kiss that held all the promise of their new life together. Winter came early to Wyoming that year, with the first heavy snow falling in early November. The Double L settled into a routine adapted to the season, mornings spent on necessary ranch work, afternoons often devoted to indoor tasks and Samuel's education, evenings filled with reading aloud. Music from the piano Owen had surprised Rebecca with as a wedding gift, and the comfortable domesticity of family life. Rebecca's transition from teacher to mother was eased by Samuel's wholehearted acceptance. The boy thrived under the combined attention of his father, new mother, and grandmother, his education progressing rapidly and his natural curiosity encouraged by all. As Christmas approached, the ranch house was transformed with decorations both purchased and handmade. Eleanor taught Samuel to string cranberries and popcorn for the tree Owen brought in from the northern section of their property, while Rebecca baked cookies from Catherine's recipe box, honoring the woman whose place she had taken while creating new traditions of her own. On Christmas Eve, after Samuel had finally been persuaded to sleep despite his excitement for morning, Owen and Rebecca sat before the fire in the parlor, enjoying a rare moment of quiet. "Happy?" Owen asked, his arm around her shoulders as she leaned against him. "Completely," Rebecca assured him, "though I never imagined my life taking this turn when we arrived here 9 months ago." "Nor did I," Owen admitted. I thought I was simply doing the right thing, offering a safe haven to two women in need. I never expected to find love again. Rebecca took his hand, intertwining their fingers. I have something to tell you, she said softly. A Christmas gift that couldn't be wrapped. Owen looked at her curiously. What is it? In about 7 months, Samuel will have a new brother or sister, Rebecca said, watching his face carefully. Dr. Miller confirmed it yesterday when I went into town with Mother. Joy bloomed across Owen's features, followed quickly by concern. You're well, no problems, perfectly well, she assured him. Just the usual tiredness in the early months. Owen gathered her close, pressing his lips to her forehead. A baby, he murmured, our baby. The wonder in his voice echoed Rebecca's own feelings. Their family, already knit together by choice and circumstance, would now be bound by blood as well. Should we tell Samuel tomorrow? She asked. As an extra Christmas surprise, he'll be ecstatic, Owen predicted. He's been asking for a sibling since Fernandez's wife had their second child last month. They sat together in contented silence, watching the fire and contemplating the future. Outside, snow fell gently across the double L, blanketing the land that had brought them together in pristine white. Remember the auction block? Rebecca asked suddenly. What you said to me and Mother when you brought us here, Owen nodded, his expression softening at the memory. Both of you are family now, he quoted himself. I meant it even then, though I had no idea how true it would become. It was the first kindness in what felt like an endless string of cruelties, Rebecca said. You gave us dignity when others would have taken the last of it away. Owen's arms tightened around her. You gave us so much more in return, a home that's truly alive again, joy for Samuel, purpose beyond just surviving from season to season. He placed a gentle hand over her still flat abdomen. And now, new life, a future I couldn't have imagined this time last year. As the clock struck midnight, marking the arrival of Christmas Day, Rebecca leaned up to kiss her husband, grateful for the unexpected journey that had brought them together from an auction block in Buffalo to this moment of perfect contentment beside a Christmas fire. Merry Christmas, Owen, she whispered against his lips. Merry Christmas, my love, he replied, the first of many, many more. True to Owen's prediction, Samuel was overjoyed at the news of a coming sibling, immediately peppering Rebecca and his father with questions about babies and making plans for teaching his brother or sister. He had no preference, he assured them. Everything he knew about ranch life and dinosaur bones. The winter passed in a contented rhythm of work and family life, the double L prospering under the combined efforts of Owen, Rebecca, and their extended ranch family. With the acquisition of the Carson property, they expanded their herd and hired 2 additional hands, making the operation one of the most successful in the county. Spring brought renewal to the land and increasing evidence of the new life growing within Rebecca. Her changing form was a source of fascination to Samuel and undisguised pride for Owen, who insisted she reduce her workload despite her protests that pregnancy wasn't an illness. Catherine worked right up until the day Samuel was born, he reminded her when she objected to his protectiveness. And I intend to do the same, Rebecca countered firmly. Within reason, of course. This compromise satisfied them both, and life continued with adjustments made as necessary. Eleanor took on additional household responsibilities, freeing Rebecca for rest when needed, while still maintaining her own garden and increasingly successful chicken operation that had become a source of extra income for the ranch. By July, with the baby due in less than a month, the heat became challenging for Rebecca. Owen insisted on moving their bedroom to the cooler north side of the house and installed additional windows for better air circulation. You're fussing, Rebecca told him affectionately as he positioned a fan near her favorite chair. Guilty, he admitted with a smile, but you do the same for me. If you were carrying our child, absolutely, she teased, then sobered. I'm grateful truly for everything. On a sweltering August afternoon, with Owen away checking water sources in the distant pastures, Rebecca felt the first pains begin. Eleanor recognized the signs immediately and sent Samuel to fetch Mr. Daniels, who dispatched one of the hands to find Owen and another to bring the doctor from Buffalo. By the time Owen arrived, galloping into the yard on his lathered horse, Rebecca's labor was well established. He found her in their bedroom, Eleanor and Mrs. Whittaker, who happened to be at the ranch for washing day, attending her. "Rebecca," he breathed, rushing to her side. "Right on time," she managed between pains, gripping his hand. "This little one seems eager to meet you." The doctor arrived an hour later, by which time Rebecca's pains were coming rapidly. Owen refused to leave her side despite traditional customs suggesting men should wait elsewhere. His steady presence gave Rebecca strength as she worked to bring their child into the world. "One more push," the doctor encouraged as evening fell. "The baby's almost here." With a final, tremendous effort, Rebecca felt the child slip from her body, followed immediately by the indignant wail of new life. A boy. The doctor announced, placing the squalling infant on Rebecca's chest after quickly cleaning him. A fine, healthy son. Owen's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he gazed at their child, a perfect blend of them, both with a shock of dark hair and Rebecca's defined features. "He's beautiful," he whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand, "just like his mother." Rebecca smiled tiredly, overwhelmed by the love that filled her at the sight of their son. "What shall we call him?" They had discussed names but hadn't settled on final choices, wanting to meet their child first. Owen studied the infant thoughtfully. "What about William, after your father?" The suggestion touched Rebecca deeply. "William Owen Larson," she tried the name aloud. "It's perfect." After Rebecca and the baby were cleaned and settled comfortably, Owen brought Samuel in to meet his brother. The boy approached the bed with uncharacteristic caution, his eyes wide as he peered at the swaddled infant. "He's so small," Samuel whispered. "You were this small once too," Owen told him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "But he'll grow quickly, especially with a big brother to show him how." "Can I touch him?" Samuel asked. Rebecca nodded, guiding Samuel's hand to gently stroke the baby's cheek. William's eyes opened briefly at the touch, dark blue and unfocused, before closing again in sleep. "He looked at me," Samuel said with wonder. "I think he knows I'm his brother." "I'm sure he does," Rebecca agreed. "And he'll count on you to help him learn all about the ranch and everything else you know." Samuel straightened his shoulders at this responsibility. "I'll be the best big brother ever, I promise." Eleanor joined them, completing the family circle around the newest Larson. "He's magnificent," she said, admiring her grandson with proud tears in her eyes. "Your father would have been so happy to see this day, Rebecca." Later, after Samuel had gone to bed bursting with news to share with the ranch hands in the morning, and Eleanor had retired to her room, Owen and Rebecca were finally alone with their newborn son. "Thank you," Owen said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed beside them. "For William. For loving Samuel as your own, for making the Double L truly a home again." Rebecca shifted the sleeping baby to one arm so she could reach for Owen's hand. "We've built this together, all of us, from the most unlikely beginning to the most perfect outcome." Owen leaned down to kiss her gently, then pressed his lips to his son's forehead. "Rest now. Tomorrow begins a new chapter for the Larson family." As Rebecca drifted toward sleep, William secure in the cradle beside their bed and Owen's protective presence nearby, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from the degradation of an auction block to the joy of this moment, from strangers bound by a legal contract to family bound by the strongest ties of love. The Wyoming night settled around the Double L Ranch, stars brightening in the vast sky above a home filled with hope and new beginnings. For Rebecca, the memory of that day in Buffalo would always remain the fear and uncertainty, yes, but more importantly, the moment when a stranger with kind eyes had seen her humanity and declared, "Both of you are family now." How right he had been. William Owen Larson grew strong and healthy, the joyful center of the family's attention. By his first birthday, he was taking wobbling steps across the ranch house floor, eagerly chasing after his adoring older brother. Samuel, now 10, had embraced his role with unexpected maturity, always ready to entertain William or help Rebecca when the baby became fussy. The Double L continued to prosper, its reputation for quality cattle and fair business practices extending throughout the territory. Owen and Rebecca worked as true partners, her management of the ranch books and insight into market trends complementing his practical knowledge of land and livestock. Eleanor, now in her mid-50s, flourished in her role as grandmother and ranch matriarch. Her garden had expanded to supply not only the Double L but also several families in Buffalo, and her preserves won ribbons at the territorial fair 3 years running. As William's second birthday approached in the summer of 1876, news of gold in the Black Hills brought a new wave of fortune seekers through the area. Buffalo grew rapidly, bringing opportunities and challenges alike. "We should consider expanding the mercantile side of our operation," Rebecca suggested one evening as she and Owen reviewed the quarterly accounts. "With so many new arrivals, there's demand for more than just beef," Owen nodded thoughtfully. "Breeding horses, perhaps." "We've had good results with the stock we started last year." Their discussion was interrupted by Samuel rushing in, eyes wide with excitement. "Pa, Ma, there's a woman at the door asking for help. She has a little girl with her and they look awful tired." Owen and Rebecca exchanged glances before following Samuel to the front door. There, they found a woman perhaps a few years younger than Rebecca, her clothes travel-worn and her face showing the strain of hard journeying. Beside her stood a girl of about 6, clutching her mother's skirt with one hand and a worn rag doll with the other. "I'm sorry to intrude," the woman began, her voice carrying the lilt of an Irish accent. "We were told at the general store in Buffalo that the Double L sometimes needs workers." "I can cook clean, so anything that's needed," her chin lifted slightly. "My husband died on the journey west. We need a fresh start." Rebecca recognized the mix of desperation and dignity all too well. "Please come inside," she said warmly. "You both look as if you could use a meal and rest before anything else is decided." Relief washed over the woman's face. "Thank you, madam. I'm Margaret Collins, and this is my daughter, Rose." As Eleanor prepared food for their unexpected visitors, Owen and Rebecca learned that Margaret's husband had succumbed to fever in Nebraska, leaving her to continue the journey alone with their daughter. They had intended to reach the goldfields, but Margaret had quickly recognized that a mining camp was no place to raise a child alone. "I heard Wyoming had opportunities for women," she explained, "that we can vote here, own property." "That's true," Rebecca confirmed. "Though life on the frontier is never easy." After the visitors had eaten and Rose had been drawn into play with William under Samuel's supervision, Owen and Rebecca stepped onto the porch to discuss the situation privately. "We could use help with the household," Rebecca acknowledged. "Especially with the new expansion plans we've been discussing." Owen nodded, "and it would be good for William to have another child around closer to his age." He glanced at her with a smile. "Unless you're planning to give him a playmate sooner rather than later." Rebecca laughed, leaning against his shoulder. "Perhaps in another year or two. William keeps me busy enough for now." They watched the sunset paint the distant mountains in gold and purple, a sight that still took Rebecca's breath away even after 5 years at the Double L. "Do you ever regret it?" Owen asked suddenly. "Coming here, I mean, even though it wasn't by choice initially." Rebecca turned to him, surprised by the question. "Never," she said firmly. "How could I regret finding you, Samuel, this home we've built together, even with all the hardships?" "The isolation, the work, the weather, especially with those things," she replied. "They've shown us what we're capable of together." Owen's arms encircled her waist, drawing her against him. "I thank God every day for bringing you to that auction block, though I hate the circumstances that put you there. I can't imagine my life without you in it." "Nor I without you," Rebecca said softly, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "Now, shall we offer Margaret and Rose a place with us?" "Not as servants, but as part of the Double L family," Owen smiled, recognizing in his wife's words an echo of what he had offered her that fateful day in Buffalo. "Yes, both of them are family now if they choose to be." As they returned inside to make the offer that would change the Collins women's lives as profoundly as it had changed Rebecca and Eleanor's, Rebecca felt a deep sense of rightness. The circle was complete, from being rescued to becoming the rescuer, from finding family to offering it to others in need. That night, with their expanded household settled and plans for the future taking shape, Rebecca stood at the window of the bedroom she shared with Owen, gazing out at the vast Wyoming night. Behind her, Owen came to wrap his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly. "How life turns in unexpected ways," she replied, leaning back against his solid warmth. "5 years ago, I thought my life was ending at that auction block. Instead, it was just beginning." Owen turned her in his arms, his expression serious in the dim light. "I knew the moment I saw you standing there, head held high despite everything, that you were someone special. I just never imagined how completely you would transform my life, my heart." "We transformed each other," Rebecca corrected gently, "and built something neither of us could have created alone." As his lips found hers in a kiss that still held all the passion and tenderness of their early days together, Rebecca knew with absolute certainty that the journey from bondage to belonging, from purchased woman to beloved wife, had been worth every step. Outside, the Wyoming stars wheeled overhead, witnesses to a love that had overcome the harshest of beginnings to forge a family and a future as vast and promising as the frontier itself.